recording the call, dedicated to ensuring that that good messaging gets out and that organic messaging gets traction. So we empower everyday social media users to use their accounts to spread the truth, to fight back against right-wing lies online, and to help amplify critical candidates and causes like the folks who are joining us today. You can go to demcast.com/join if you'd like to become a member of the DemCast network and you aren't already. And that's it. So, like I said, super excited to have a couple of really important guests here. As most of you know on the call, we've been running what we call Mobilize for Midterms, which is our midterms messaging program. Thank you all for joining that and for helping to boost candidates like Wiley and Michelle. We we have on our website, if you go to demcast.com/midterms, we've identified critical candidates across the House and the Senate and in key state races like gubernatorial races and AG and Secretary of State races that are going to be really important both for those individual states and for keeping democracy afloat as we head toward 2024. And Wiley Nickel from NC 13. And I'm not looking at my notes, so I think I got it right, from NC 13. There are a lot of districts in this country, and Michelle Vallejo from Texas 15 are both in toss-up races that are going to be really critical for us keeping the House in 2024. So super excited to have them here to talk about their candidacies and just engage in some conversation. And so that you guys know who's on the call, we always have a mix of social media activists, but for the most part, everybody on the call, it sort of double dips as social media activists and sort of on the ground activists. We have a lot of postcarders and phone bankers and text bankers and door knockers who are potential volunteers for y'all and highly engaged folks. So so that's the preamble for our call, and so we just wanted to kick off. And Michelle, maybe we can start with you because we want to learn about both of you. Maybe just give us a little bit about it, and folks on the call who might not be as familiar with you, a little bit of background about Michelle before you decided to run for office. Like, what's your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining this conversation and for helping us amplify the message about our race. So my background is in small business and community organizing. My parents are both immigrants to this country from Mexico, and they started a flea market right around the time I was 6 or 7 years old, which is where I grew up. That's how I have deep connections and deep roots with my community, because to this day, I now co-own and manage that flea market right alongside my dad. And those are the stories that I'm taking with me to Congress, and that's the idea. Every single day, I think I was able to witness a lot of beautiful connections and experience our beautiful culture. But at the same time, I got to see how challenging it was for people in my community to be able to, quite frankly, live with dignity. Because so many people have to work every single day of their life, not by choice, but by force. And working at the flea market, I've seen so many hardworking families just go through such devastating experiences And Wiley, I got to read a little bit about your background, and something that I found that resonated with mine is that unfortunately my mom had a pretty challenging health journey herself. She had multiple sclerosis for about 15 years since I was 4 years old. And unfortunately, she passed away at the very young age of 46. And her journey was one that I didn't realize how challenging it was until maybe after the fact, to where I recognized that having to go to Mexico to receive healthcare and to be able to afford medications is not a dignified way to live. When we're Americans, when we are working hard in this country. And that just opened my eyes to realize that my community as well was experiencing these challenges, even though we weren't talking about them with each other. But we knew that, families would hit hard times. And it inspired me to just get more involved in the flea market, and just have an open door in a sense, or an open office line where people could call and reach out to me. So I also knocked on the door of a local community organization called LUPE, or La Unión del Pueblo Entero, which is a sister organization to the United Farm Workers Union. And I told them, hey, let's work together, let's collaborate, because we are serving a lot of the same community members that for so long have felt ignored and neglected, and not just felt ignored and neglected, but have been living in the shadows in our community. And so that really inspired me to get involved with my community more. But due to redistricting and these, I would like to say, the last ditch efforts of Republicans here in Texas, trying to strip away people from their right and power to vote. They did make this district the most competitive district in the state of Texas. And I am in a toss-up race, and we'll definitely go a little bit more into that. But, all of my experiences and my connections really culminated into me getting nominated and endorsed to run. So I've been running every single day of this campaign with the energy of my community, going at it in a grassroots way. Even my logo was created by a local artist. And so we've just been diving into our grassroots way of things. And it's proven to be successful. We've been outspent every step of the way, but not out hustled and not out organized.
It's amazing. What a story. And I'm sure because you have that, the background that you do, I'm sure that helps. And clearly you're great at connecting with people. Like, I'm sure that that really helps connect you with as you're out on the stump, or it seems like not even stump, but more more in the local stores, and just out, like, connecting with people on the ground. So congrats for making the choice to jump in. Wiley, can we get the same kind of background from you? Like, how did you where did you come from?
Sure.
What's your origin story?
The most important background piece and title I have for this campaign is, I'm running as Adeline and Prescott's dad. That's where I start. Everything that I do as a state senator. I worked for 2 White Houses. I worked for Al Gore when he was vice president, and then again for a self-described skinny kid with a funny name from the south side of Chicago who said, yes, we can, Barack Obama, for his first term, and now in my second term in the North Carolina State Senate. And my main reason for getting involved in politics, like Michelle was talking about, is when I was 18, and Michelle, my dad, was 43 at the time, he died from cancer. And my takeaway from that certainly was that we've got to get access to affordable healthcare for everybody. Nobody should have to go through these incredibly horrible and difficult, challenges without healthcare. So we've got to get everyone covered. That was what led me to work for 2 White Houses. Now I'm a father, and I want to do everything I can to make sure my kids and your kids and everyone's kids here, have the ability to succeed, and that we can build a better world for all of them. So that's what got me involved, and I've been proud and honored to serve in the state Senate. this is a race that is, again, like Michelle, she said she's got the most competitive race in Texas. We've got the most competitive race in North Carolina. We fought to get fair maps in our state. We got it all the way to the Supreme Court. Our courts drew these maps. So it's a map for North Carolina, and especially this one in this toss-up seat where, we work harder than our opponent, we're going to win. So the help that DemCast gives us, amplifying our message on social media, is incredibly helpful. And I guess just to that point, today was a huge day kind of for social media engagement because our opponent said he wanted to defund the FBI. But while he was saying that, he made it very clear that he thought all of his MAGA Republican friends, who were talking about banana republics meant the clothing store. So that was something that a lot of people, like everybody here at DemCast, help it out. That someone who is not qualified to serve in the United States House of Representatives. So I appreciate all the support and help. We need it in a race like mine and a race like Michelle's. It's going to come down to just outworking our opponents to get across the finish line in these races.
There are always those moments, where your opponent helps you out, in a race, and I caught that one, and it really does. I mean, you almost hate to dive in there and jump in when somebody says something grotesquely stupid, but being a member of Congress is a big deal, and we're talking about healthcare and jobs, and we don't want to have people who are just literally not qualified to do the job in there. So I think we're always as respectful as can be, while also trying to point out the deficits that opposing candidates have for our focus candidates. Lori, do you want to?
Yeah, and I mean, you stole our next question a little bit there, Wiley, is that what makes your opponent not the right person for this district and your constituents? And it sounds like he's making that clear all on his own, but we like to draw that contrast. So is there anything, about his stances that don't really work for your constituents?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a real clear case here in this race. This is just a crystal clear difference on just about every issue. Our opponent is a 27-year-old named Bo Hines. He is on the most extreme position on every single issue. He has never worked a real job in his life. He moved from the other side of the state into our district. He won a very crowded Republican primary with Donald Trump's endorsement. He says he's 100% pro-Trump. He's pushed the big lie that Trump won the election. But on the issues, absolutely horrible. Michelle, for immigration, my opponent, says that the first act in Congress he would make would be to ban all immigration for 10 years. It would literally wreck our country. On abortion, the most extreme position, he says he wants to criminalize abortion on the federal level with no exceptions. I mean, that's incredibly dangerous, and the list goes on and on. It's an opponent who we're excited to get out of bed every day to go and campaign in this seat, because winning really will mean something about where we are as a country on ending gun violence, on women's rights, on the right to vote. For those who want to take a deeper dive, there's a great New York Times article about this race by Frank Brunei about this choice and why it's so important. For where we're going as a country. So, we've got one that, will really matter for control of Congress, where the 538 has us as the tipping point seat, but we've got an opponent that we need to beat.
Absolutely. That's just horrific. Yes, in the chat, people are comparing your opponent to Madison Cawthorn, which seems not inappropriate.
I mean, on policy issues, 100% the same. We have and North Carolina rejected Madison Cawthorn in our primary election just weeks ago, and then we got Madison Cawthorn version 2.0 on the other side. By the way, they both got 32%. So, most Republicans didn't want him,
Yeah.
but the endorsement was enough to give Madison Cawthorn 32% as well. One of my Republican Senate colleagues got 33% in that race. But, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Michelle? What's your opponent like? And can you tell us why they're not a great fit for your district?
Absolutely. So my opponent is pretty much trying to hand over our district to the National Republican Party, and the part of the Republican Party that is the most furthest right, and that is definitely not in line or in touch with anything that we need or experience here in the border region and in Texas 15. They are completely against access to abortion health care in all instances, including rape and incest, just like Wiley's opponent. They are also, their platform is pretty much finishing what Trump started and finishing the wall. And here in our border region, we know that we are deserving of so many more investments when it comes to immigration policy, when it comes to border infrastructure, and just the resources we need to directly meet the challenge that we have as a border region. And a country that is receiving and humanitarian when it comes to accepting those who are seeking safety and trying to fight for their own version of the American dream, much like many of our family members have come to this country. And so it's pretty stark contrast between my opponent and I. And you could also tell by the way that they campaign that they're just pouring millions of dollars of outside interest money to where they will not be a voice at all for any of the people who need it most in our district. And that is something that something similar to what Wiley said, it really resonates with me that we get up out of bed so excited to do this work because it really matters and we really understand what's at stake here. We know that if we allow those efforts to make even deeper inroads in South Texas, because right now they're trying to buy out the entire South Texas region and put a radical right Republican flag on it. And we know that that's big money. That's big money trying to take people's power away, trying to strip them of their right to vote. And we're seeing it across the board. That's how they're playing the game here. And quite frankly, it's been what's been hope, a glimpse of hope. What's been good about this campaign and kind of running against a candidate like that is that even Republicans, people who are more traditional or more conservative Republicans, understand that that is a very dangerous way to do politics for our home, our region, and our country. So we've been able to connect with Republicans. We've been able to connect with people who are even more independent thinking because they could tell that if we allow our congressional seat and our representative to be on the national stage representing us like that, we're gonna take decades back when it comes to access to rights, access to affordable healthcare, or just driving initiatives and bold progressive policies forward for the people of South Texas.
Right on, definitely. That is, it's been quite interesting watching how the radical or / extremism of the right, is really polling well with independence, is understanding those two terms when you're talking about, those kind of candidates. People understand that they don't want extremists, in Congress making policy for us. So, Jamie.
Well, and there's probably a lot of crossover in this question, but what really are the most important issues facing your districts, and what's the best way to talk about it? Because every place has that little bit of nuance of how you kind of bring up these important issues. So,
and maybe Michelle, take it first.
I'll jump in. So here, definitely something I think we're hearing across the country is the pressures of inflation, the pressures of just making sure people are able to get food at the table and have a gas tank that gets them to work and back home. That really is a pressure, though, that people in our district have been feeling and living with for so long that now it's just been even more exacerbated. I remember thinking about the impacts of the pandemic on our district and realizing that we were already living under such economic pressure that just brought everything to the forefront to where we no longer could deny it. We no longer could hide it or keep it from our family members or keep it from our social safety networks. So this is definitely something that people are talking about. And the way that we talk about it is, raising the minimum wage. Right now in Texas, the minimum wage is $7.25. And even when talking to small business owners, we don't want our community members to be living with such minimal resources and access to the things that they need to live a good quality life, and for them to raise their children in environments where they could take advantage of their education and every opportunity available to them. So we are not just talking to laborers and people who are figuring out how they could advocate for themselves as workers, but also small business owners, because we understand, and I personally come from a small business background, and I myself am navigating this with my family and with my small business. It's like, what do we need in South Texas in order to, rise to that challenge and be able to just live in a better social economy here together? Another issue that we're talking about is access to healthcare. And under that, or aside to that, is also making sure that women and families have access to abortion care, and that families and individuals are treated with dignity and respect to the point where they get to make their own choices with whoever they see fit, whether that's their physician, whether that's their family members, whether that's their faith and church leaders. I think growing up here in South Texas, that's how I had conversations about abortion, about family planning with my family. It was within the privacy of our home and discussing what was right and what was wrong. But another aspect of just access to healthcare here, something I touched on a little earlier, is that people here are forced to go to Mexico. People have a lot of challenges to even make an appointment across the board. This is retired teachers. This is people who have employer-based insurance, and this is veterans. This is just everyone having a really hard time to be able to even make an appointment and take the day off from work and be able to afford the very basic needs. Another issue that is, I think, unique to our region here in the way that we talk about it is immigration. Also in particular, because my opponent is really just trying to drive this idea that, immigrants are evil. Immigrants are, people to look down to, not people to receive, not people to treat with dignity. And so, here in this region, one thing that's important is to be able to talk about this issue in a way that resonates across the board. And whether you're talking to people in Border Patrol, or you're talking to people from a mixed status household, or if you're talking to English dominant speakers who've been in this country for generations, who might have experienced maybe getting slapped on the hand by speaking Spanish when they were growing up in an elementary school. And that's, the reality that we need these investments to be able to improve our ports of entry for both public and private use. That is an economic stimulus that we do not benefit from. Everyone does not feel that that push that we should be feeling. So that's one thing I'm excited about. Another investment we need when it comes to immigration is policy that works for us, that isn't just a Band-Aid approach. So we need, for sure, definitely need a process for asylum, but we also need a process and pathway for citizenship. And the people who come to mind in particular are DACA students who have been, in a sense, brought out of their safety, of their privacy, and put in an even more vulnerable situation. And I'm also thinking about some veterans that we have in our region that have served, but maybe haven't reached the 5-year time in service, and they are up for deportation. So there are a lot of pockets of community members that are, at risk just because we do not have working policy when it comes to immigration.
Amazing rundown. Thank you. That really helps us understand when we're talking about your race, when we're responding to your posts, when we're making calls and postcarding, kind of what the most important issues are and how to talk about them. Wiley, you wanna chime in on the same question?
Sure. In this district, access to reproductive health care is incredibly important and a top of mind issue, especially when we have an opponent who has the most extreme position, supporting a federal ban with no exceptions. So that's an issue we talk a lot about. It's one that is the top of mind issue for a lot of my constituents, a lot of people in this district. North Carolina, thankfully, is a state where abortion is safe and it is still legal. We've got a Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, and because we have 22 Democrats in the state Senate, I'm one of those. We're able to sustain his vetoes. We've been able to do that for my whole 2 terms in the Senate. So we've been able to stop bad bills. I have friends in Texas, Michelle, and I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to be there with the leaders you have in office and those who are trying to take away women's rights and are doing it in your state. So I, certainly understand that issue. And, in North Carolina, it's legal and but a big issue, in my district, we think we're going to have data to show we're actually the fastest growing congressional district in the country. Austin is the fastest growing area, but the Raleigh and the Raleigh suburbs, is number 2 in the country. And this district that we have was it's got downtown Raleigh and it's got the Raleigh suburbs, but it was carved out in a way that gets all of the growth. So tons of people moving in. The cost of housing is skyrocketing in my district. In Raleigh, as an example, the cost of rental homes went up 50% in the last year. I mean, that's just unattainable for people right now. So is the cost of childcare. Seniors can't afford their prescription drugs. Those are the issues that we spend a lot of time talking about. And we're failing to make the investments we need in our infrastructure and public education. But if we get the right people in office, we can fix those things. We can make those changes. That's what, we spend most of our time talking about, the economy. That's what these elections all come down to, and the things that we can do to help folks in their daily lives to bring down costs. That's what we got to be talking about as Democrats. The things we've done, in Congress, a lot of good stuff to talk about, and the things we can still do if we can hold the House and hopefully make some gains in the Senate. And one, I think, just local issue. Well, one point to what Michelle was talking about, the people we're talking to, we're going after pro-democracy Republicans and independents. Those are the folks who are going to have such an important say-so in this election. But I have to talk about just the ability to vote and gerrymandering, which is on the ballot everywhere in this country. The case that came out of North Carolina is one that I think folks should really know about. Moore v. Harper. I'd encourage folks to talk about this a lot because it's a big deal. This is a case that Tim Moore is our Speaker of the House in North Carolina. It came out of North Carolina. And it was this fringe argument that said state courts can't tell a state legislature what to do on election law, specifically gerrymandering. And no one ever thought the court would take it, but they took this case. They're going to be hearing it later this year, earlier next year, and making a decision about it. But if they support our Republican Speaker, state courts will not be able to say anything about legislative maps. So in North Carolina, that would mean with our current legislature, they would draw a map for our 14 seats that's probably a 12-2 or an 11-3 congressional map. Right now, we got a map that when we win our election will be a 7-7 delegation, a 50-50 split in a 50-50 state. So, that I think, getting that bill through the House, a bill to fix that, just a law where we pass it through the House and Senate, with senators willing to go around the filibuster to get this done is going to be crucial if the court rules the wrong way. And I don't have a lot of faith in this court to rule the right way on most issues.
I don't.
And the Supreme Court's already said that federal courts can't rule on gerrymandering unless it's with the VRA. So that's that's just a license to gerrymander.
And Jamie, as long as you're talking about that, pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That's so crucial for pushing the VRA where it needs to be.
Absolutely. So, so that's some background on, I think, issues that are important in your states. What about the sort of similar but flip side, like talking to people about what matters to them is important, but then when it comes down to it and you go to DC, you're going to have a job to do, and the job is passing legislation. So what are you bringing in your briefcase, you know, to DC? What do you want to do? What kind of policy do you want to fight for in particular in DC for your constituents? And we'll go back to Michelle.
So here, it's just so clear to us, and I think it's something that we see across the board, whether you're Democrat, you're an independent or Republican, and that's that immigration policy is not working. That's currently in place. And also we've seen it become an issue that becomes so politicized, and that national Republicans and Democrats use and utilize as a tool for their campaigns, but it doesn't drive solutions forward. And we end up becoming like a second thought, like an afterthought after the election cycles. And this is something that I'm not going to stand for. This is something that I'm going to be very vocal about. And, you know, I really hope to drive efforts to be able to have what we used to hear, comprehension, immigration reform. Like, what happened to this? I really want to know how things have gotten gridlocked so much so that we could start picking it apart. And something that I'm looking to do is really learning to work with my colleagues and even across the aisle, because we see that people across the country are so unsatisfied and their opinions are very low of Congress. And I think this is something that we really need to work on, because we are the people's house. You know, we are the voice of the community members in Congress and in DC. So I really think we need to empower people through our positions as representatives and bring that voice to DC. One thing that's not policy oriented necessarily, but just a general factor that I really want to make sure that I lean into first and foremost is bringing the experiences of my district up. I don't necessarily want to fit and plug right into the Democratic national agenda. I want to be able to drive and bring the insight that we have here in South Texas to better inform policy across the board. So those are things that I know that we are desperately in need of, and I'm really looking forward to getting to office and just hit the ground running.
And I'm sure that's music to the ears of your future constituents. So, Wiley?
I think Michelle made a great point there. It's one we talk about a lot. As a senator, if Republicans have a good idea, I'm with them. If not, I'm against them. And compromise is something that you have to do as a state legislator, and certainly as a congressman. We are so divided as a country. We need folks going to Washington who are trying to bring our country together. Doesn't mean sacrificing our values, but it means getting things done. That's what people expect. And there are some bipartisan accomplishments in this last Congress. I think that's important. There's a lot more we can do. But the things that I'm going to be really focusing on are, number one, infrastructure, a big issue for my district. Healthcare, we've got to get a public option, make healthcare more affordable. Childcare is a huge issue. I worked as a senator to get 2 years of universal pre-K for North Carolina. It was not successful, but that's one that will make a huge difference in people's lives, allow so many people to go into the workforce because the cost of childcare is so expensive. So I think that's got to be a top priority. And then the two things that we've got to do when we get to Washington, make sure that, we have fair elections and we get rid of partisan gerrymandering on the federal level. And we can pass a bill through the House and Senate to do an independent redistricting commission for the entire country for congressional maps, especially with the Supreme Court decision. That's something that is, a major priority, and as a father, I got to tell you, I am so committed to doing everything I can to make sure we protect women's rights. And that means making sure every woman has the right to make her own decisions about her body and her reproductive health choices. Those are choices that should be between a woman and her doctor. And we've got to codify Roe v. Wade and put that protection into law as soon as we get into Congress in this next election.
You're here. Lori, you were, I think, looking at the questions that were rolling in.
I am. We have quite a few questions here. I think you both have really addressed the women's rights, to choose reproductive freedoms. But one of the things that's, I think I touched on, and you both have briefly mentioned it, is really inflation. And, the increased costs at the pump, at the grocery store, what's important for your district in particular, and what sort of things do you imagine that you could help with that once you're in Congress?
We certainly talk about this a lot. There's a lot we can do. We have an inflation action plan with a ton of points and can talk about what more is left. But really, it comes down to some basic stuff. It means making investments in our supply chain and investing in U.S. manufacturing. Those are key issues. And we've got to crack down on corporations who are price gouging at the pump and taking advantage of the situation. Those are the things that I think are important to talk about and things that we can do. I'm excited, though, about the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that just passed and should be signed by President Biden within days. A lot of good relief. We're bringing down the debt as well, and the investments that they make, are going to be really, really important and helpful, and certainly something that's very positive to talk about.
So definitely +1 to the points that Wiley made. Immediately, what comes to mind are certain parts of the district that, I'm fighting to represent here that are pretty left out because they're more rural. So my district runs from McAllen, Texas, right on the border, and it goes up to Guadalupe County. It's a 7-county district. And it ends right outside of San Antonio. And so people's access to even just capital to be able to make an investment or to purchase a home are very different throughout the district. And the people who I think about the most are those in the middle and the middle part of the district. I want to give a shout out to Mel Torres, who's holding it down and such a soldier for us in right smack in the middle of the district in Three Rivers in Live Oak County, because that is a community that I see just needs more investment and needs more attention when it comes to just rural development and making sure that there are viable local economies that are being not just invested in, but continuously cared for. I think there's a lack of care when it comes to, just dealing with everyday things, because there's so many things to do. But I think we really need to lean in a little bit more and take an evaluation of where our communities are at, where our local cities and our local municipalities are at, and who's missing what. Like, I don't think we've taken an inventory, and this is just like a very logical step. And, I really appreciate my background from coming from small business. I'm a social entrepreneur, someone who doesn't just look at the bottom line number, but really the social impact that investments have. And I think that this is a perspective that I could bring to Congress and really deliver for my district, but also bring insight and passion to making sure that our more rural parts of all of our counties and all of our states are able to have better opportunities and better options. Just like something that comes to mind are the stories that I hear when I take district tours and go up and visit folks, just how hard it is for them to go to the hospital, the hour-long drives they need to take to be able to get to the nearest hospital to them. And so this is just, people are living in crisis on top of experiencing the pandemic, on top of experiencing earlier this year, we had fires that were really hard to contain. Right now, we're going through a drought and just increasingly more and more pressures that we really need, attention to focus on and improve.
Absolutely. Wiley, a question for you. Do you see North Carolina trending more blue, more and more? Do you feel like that's because people are moving in? Do you feel like it's policy changes, and I'm very interested because North Carolina is on my list of states when I try to eject myself from the red hellhole of Tennessee.
Well, North Carolina is just so crucial on so many levels. We are the state that Donald Trump won by the smallest margin. He barely won North Carolina. It's going to be tough to get Arizona and Georgia again. I hope we do, but if we don't, we got to get North Carolina. So it's one that is crucial for the next president of the United States. That we get this state, that we make these investments in this election and certainly in the next one to get there. But we're moving in the right direction as a state. We are a 50-50 state. Virginia was just years ago like we are, but they made these great investments in their state. They brought in, important employers the way we're doing, and it shifted the state. And that's what we're seeing here. So in my Senate district, we just got Apple to bring their East Coast headquarters out to my Senate district. 4,000 plus great high paying jobs. So that those sort of things are certainly changing our state in a really good way. So it's a state that will be important for the Senate, for the House, and certainly the White House. And one thing you're valuing a congressional district, I just put out about my seat. Everyone's I'm sure seen the January 6th hearings. What they were trying to do is decertify state election results, get states to send in fake electors for the losing candidate Trump. And if they do that, if they succeeded in Pence doing something crazy or whatever, they would kick the election to the House of Representatives. And if they're able to do that, you vote by state congressional delegation, and each state gets one vote. So when I win this seat, I'll be Democrat number 7 in a 14-member delegation, so 7-7. So winning this congressional district, could be the difference in the next president too. If we get this some sort of, something happening where Republicans are able to decertify a state, election result when whoever the Democratic nominee is wins that state. So another reason why this state is important. But we're moving in the right direction, and I'm excited about what we're going to be able to see on election night. We got a great important race with Sherry Beasley, who's doing great. And that's a seat that we got to win if we want to get around the filibuster to, put the protections of Roe v. Wade into federal law.
Absolutely. Thank you for that whole nightmare scenario. Now I'm going to have bad dreams. This
We're going to win. You're going to help us get.
Well, that way we win, and it'll be fabulous, right?
Hey, wait, can I say one more?
That's the solution.
Related to issues in politics. Michelle has the best signs. I can't believe what great signs she has. I'm really jealous. Those are fantastic.
Yes, they're great.
Totally agree.
And you know what? And we're not going to have to worry about the nightmare scenario because we're keeping the House, we're getting 2 more Senate seats, and we're going to codify all these laws.
That's right.
Yeah, but again, the reason that being here matters is we got to hold the House to do it. And these are my race, Michelle's race, are just central to that.
Absolutely. So Michelle, a question I think that you are uniquely qualified to talk about is that this trend of Latino voters moving, more towards the GOP. We think, part of that is disinformation campaigns that have been targeting Latino voters. But what do you see in your district, and are there ways from a social media aspect that we can help diffuse some of that?
So there's definitely a lot of investment pouring in order to spread lies and label people who are doing really hard, impactful work in our community. And one way that we really could combat that is showing up and doing the work and knocking on people's doors. So all the help that everyone lends us, from writing postcards to doing phone calls and even coming out to the district. I have an open invite to everyone to come out to Texas 15 because it's really fun. And we always love to add a little color and some fun music, and definitely a lot of really good, delicious food. But really that's what we're doing. We're showing that we're doing the work, and we're not just allowing a national party to come in and run our race. We are, really putting up an effort to not let that take us over. And I think I myself as a candidate have made that commitment, not just to myself, but to all the people who I feel have already voted for me in the primary and in the runoff. And I just want to give a little bit of a snippet of what my runoff looked like, because I ended up 35 votes up from my opponent. And so what that did was it made people excited, and it made people believe in the power of voting again. And so that has been something that we've also been excited to share. And when it comes to amplifying our message on social media, I think it's important to stay positive in the sense that we need to stay focused on what we are getting out, what needs to be heard. And yes, it's highlighting the advancements or the impact that Democrats have had, even though we know that Republicans' agenda is just to block anything possible, even when it's putting their own constituents through the ringer. And I think here our community members are seeing that, people have more access than ever through social media, through access to websites and opportunities like this that are connecting us across the country. And I think we just need to keep doing that. And just the work that you all do in DemCast, amplifying people's message and sharing, the battles really that people are confronted with across the country, that shows unity. And I think when it comes to the Democratic Party, or just anyone who's fighting for a better life for their community based on, truth, based on good, wholesome values in the sense of protecting the right to vote, protecting women's rights, protecting people's ability to make their own healthcare choices, and that doesn't mean just trusting them, but also making sure that they have access and that their local community has that talent that is getting developed. So, I think across the board, we should just keep amplifying the fact that we're all in this together, and every little bit really goes a long way. Some people might feel that a $5 contribution doesn't help, but yes, it really does. Every donor number, every dollar added, every phone call that is made really adds into that overall impact. And, I love getting into a room of people where there's, about 30 folks or so, and say, this made the difference. Look right next to you and count yourself in that, because if it wouldn't have been for, every single little effort we put in, it wouldn't be the case that I'd be here putting up this fight against a pretty radical right Republican who, if they were to win, these efforts are going to be even more emboldened and go after even more congressional seats. But also we see here locally that they're going after local elections as well. So this is an effort that is coming across against all of us at all levels. So that's why we really need to come together and fight. And just in particular about the specific question, Lori, that you asked about this, Latino movement. People here in my community vote based on who they could trust. And it makes a big deal when they see you. Okay, so Trump came to our border region here, our district, maybe 2 or 3 times when he was running. And what that did is it made people feel seen. When you're in a district or you're in a community where you just felt completely ignored by every party across the board, you're going to jump onto any opportunity you get. But we've seen that, those efforts have been pretty divisive, because they'll prop up, this scenario that the border wall or like the border region is just chaos, which is not the truth. We have very calm days. We come to the office, we get our work done, we do what we got to do. But now it's even more obvious that we've been people's politicians' pawns. And we've seen that even with our own governor here in the state of Texas, and the way that they are campaigning. They're creating these photo ops, and they're creating press conferences where we don't even have a voice, but they're coming to South Texas and claiming that, they're speaking from this region. And for us who live here on the ground, we see right through that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you both very, very much for joining us. We're super excited to have you on and be blasting out as much as we can to everybody to get involved. We put a lot of links to your social media, your campaign sites in the chat for people to contribute and sign up to help. And I think, Jamie, we have one last agenda item, because tomorrow is National Poll Worker Recruitment Day, and we know how important it is to make sure we have people who are actually working the polls.
Yes.
And really quick before we do that one, I just wanted to also say thank you to Wiley and Michelle. I'm just super impressed by both of you. I know everybody on the call is. I've been getting some texts and direct messages being like, I didn't know these people at all, but wow, so I think we've got some people who are ready to make some calls and do the work and donate and all that kind of stuff. So of course, do the social media amplification. So thank you both so much. And just so you both know, and everybody on the call knows, that next week we've got some top of ticket people for both of your states on calls over the next couple of weeks. So next Monday, same time, same bad channel, we've got Sherry Beasley, who's going to be joining us from North Carolina, along with Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. And so that's our call next week. So everybody please join for those. It's really important, these connections between these candidates, because the better Wiley does, the better Sherry does, the better Sherry does, the better Wiley does, and so on. And then the week after that, on the 29th, I believe, we have Rochelle Garza, who's running against Ken Paxton for AG in Texas. So really excited to welcome those folks coming up. Hopefully we can get some synergy going with boosting all of these great candidates and getting a ton of wins in November. So thank you both very much.
Real quick, Nick, what date is that y'all are speaking with Rochelle?
It's 2 weeks from right now.
29th.
Monday the 29th.
Okay, awesome. We are actually having a joint fundraiser with her on the 28th. So we'll be able to see her that day before. But yeah, big shout out to Rochelle. I love her very, very much. Please support her as well. We really need her in Texas.
Yep.
Well, and if you saw the latest polls, she's only 2 points behind Ken Paxton right now. So, and
she's a superwoman because she had a baby and she's on the campaign trail with a newborn. Like, this is a woman who is so, so amazing. And yeah, can't sing enough praises to her.
I thought Democrats were supposed to go into labor while they were accepting the nomination. Isn't that the trend this year?
Nice.
So.
Well, thank you again. Thank you both so much. And yes, we've got folks here from Power to the Polls. So Jamie, do you want to do that intro?
Yeah, so we are so excited. We partnered with Power to the Polls. And tomorrow is National Poll Worker Recruitment Day. We've all seen the last few years the death threats that these guys are getting. And so we need to make sure that these polls are actually, we have people there. So I'd like to introduce Marta Hansen, and she is the partnerships lead for Power to the Polls. And they are a national nonpartisan initiative to recruit the next generation of poll workers. And so she is kind of here to just give us a little bit of rundown about tomorrow. So take it away.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jamie, and to the whole DemCast team. I'm really excited to be here with y'all for the last couple of minutes of the call to give a quick plug about Poll Worker Recruitment Day tomorrow, why you should care about poll workers, why you should consider being a poll worker yourself, and how you can help us activate tomorrow to help address poll worker shortages. So as Jamie said, Power the Polls is a national nonpartisan initiative to recruit the next generation of poll workers. We really want to ensure a free, fair, safe, and accessible election for everyone. And it's our vision that voting is a positive and empowering experience for every single person who shows up at the polls, that everybody has people who look like them and speak their language when they show up. So Power the Polls launched in 2020 when, as you may recall, there were some poll worker shortages, and we recruited over 700,000 folks in under 100 days. And the way that we work is we connect with election officials in all 5,000 election offices all across the country to have one central place where you can figure out how to apply in your local jurisdiction to be a poll worker. So why should you care about poll workers? Elections come down to every single polling place. There is a direct link between poll workers and a functioning electoral system. If we don't have poll workers, people can't vote. If people don't vote, democracy, as you know, doesn't function as it should. And when polling places are closed, also, as you know, this disproportionately impacts low-income communities, communities of color, and rural communities. It takes about 1 million poll workers to run, to make an average general election work. So we need every single one of you. So why you should consider being a poll worker? It is arguably the most effective nonpartisan thing you can do to support our democracy, especially on election day itself. As Michelle said, it's a great way to believe in the power of voting again. She was talking about her own election, but I think poll working is a really similar thing. Poll workers basically help things run smoothly on election day, from running voting machines and setting up the location to passing out those fabulous I voted stickers. And we're already seeing a need for multilingual poll workers, tech-savvy poll workers, and folks to support early voting. So in my 1 minute left, please help us promote National Poll Worker Recruitment Day tomorrow. Jamie put together a fabulous toolkit to make it really easy to post on all of the social media platforms, to sign up yourself, to encourage your friends and family and community to do the same, and to show up and support your neighbors in this most pressing and important way that we all civically engage. So thank you for the couple of minutes to have me on here, and I hope to see you all online tomorrow.
Marta, thank you so much. Such important work. This is like core democracy stuff right here. So really appreciate this. Everybody, please jump in tomorrow. Like Marta said, and Jamie put it in the chat. We've put the Power the Polls toolkit into one of our toolkits in Speechify to make it super easy to use. Go to town.
There are some Spanish ones in there. Yes. Even if you don't speak Spanish, please share, because so many groups fail to do the Spanish speaking ones. And so I was so happy to see not only the social media posts in Spanish, but graphics as well.
And bilingual Spanish-English speakers is actually the #1 request that we're hearing from election administrators across the country. So please do promote that to your communities.
That makes total sense.
Bruce in the chat said that, Marta, that you made pole working sound like pole vaulting. So yes.
Amazing. I'm thrilled to hear it. We should really add a pole vaulting meme. We also have amazing memes and graphics and GIFs and things. So
nice.
I love it. Thanks, Bruce. Nicest compliment I've gotten today.
Well, we will make sure that the DemCast community jumps in wholeheartedly tomorrow for that. So thank you, and let's recruit some poll workers. And just a note for other folks, or for all the folks who are on right now. Right now it's thought that Joe Biden's going to sign the big climate bill. Inflation Reduction Act into law tomorrow. So we're going to do something at some point tomorrow, probably around the signing of the bill, which we think is going to be in the 2 o'clock Eastern range. So we'll have a hashtag, and we'll be trying to push sort of celebratory messaging with info about that bill tomorrow as well. So busy day on social tomorrow. We won't thankfully the Power of the Polls is all day. So just kick in on that whenever you can, and maybe at multiple times during the day across multiple social channels, and then we'll also jump in when the time is right for the big bill signing. So thank you everybody for joining us today. This was a great call, great guests, Marta, Wiley, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us. And like I said earlier, next week we'll be here with 2 really important candidates for 2022, Sherry Beasley, who's running for Senate in North Carolina, and Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, who's running for re-election in Nevada. So look forward to seeing you all then.